Ag PhD full episodes and more are now available on Acres TV, the newest ag platform connecting you to fields of information. Look for us on watchacrestv.com.
The first part of our show each week is called Farm Basics, and it's where we talk about something that we commonly do on the farm that if you're a non-farmer or a beginning farmer, you may not know exactly why we're doing the things we're doing on the farm. So today we're going to discuss why a farmer would make bales.
We do get basic questions like this. Why are there round bales? Why are there small square bales? Why are there big square bales? Some are yellow, some are green. What's going on here with all these bales?
All right, so let's step back for just a second and just say when a farmer is going to make bales, that is the residue that is left typically after harvest in a grain crop. So let's say it's corn or soybeans or wheat or oats or something like that. So if they're making those kinds of bales, those are typically going to be more yellow because the material has been dead. So if you look at something that's live, like let's say it's grass or alfalfa, that gets cut and then that's still green because it was alive, then you bale it up. Well, if it's been alive, it's carrying a lot more water. I never used to like hay bales or alfalfa bales because they were very heavy because of all the water in them. The material that's going to be yellow, that's dried out a little bit. It's a lot lighter. That was pretty fun throwing those yellow bales, especially oat bales or wheat straw bales. That's what I like the best.
Well, you may ask, well, what are you doing with all these bales? Now, Brian was mentioning the oat straw. So after we harvested oats, the residue that was left, we'd bale that up and we'd use it for bedding. So we'd put that down in our pens where we had hogs, for example. Now they had a nice, clean, soft bedding that they could sleep on. That was a great thing. But the green bales, well, those were clearly for food, and we would give those to our cattle. And like Brian said, oh man, we'd have to lug these big, heavy green bales out there, but man, did they love eating alfalfa or grass, those types of things. However, I would say this, sometimes the yellow bales or things that are baled up after a harvest could be used for feed too. Corn stalk bales are one example. That's considered roughage that a lot of times farmers will say, okay, I'm going to bale up some corn stalks, I'm going to feed some of that to my cattle, or I'm going to grind it up and put it in with the cattle ration just to give them a little bit more bulk. I look at it kind of like salad, Brian. I really don't want to eat salad, but sometimes if I put some salad in, I don't have to eat as much of the more expensive part of the meal.
Yep. Now, Darren brought up earlier, why do you see small bales sometimes versus the large square bales or round bales? Well, the big difference basically comes back to hand labor. When Darren and I were growing up on the farm, we were our dad's hand labor, and he apparently had lots of it because all we did was small square bales. So those we had to throw by hand. Whereas the large round bales or the large square bales, that's when you have mechanization. So if, let's say, you don't have all that help on the farm, you're going to run a tractor and pick these things up, well, you're not running with the tiny little bales.
Well, there's certainly been a lot of changes over the history of farming. Obviously, there weren't balers until recent times, and farmers would just pile things up and try to scoop it up into a wagon to haul it in with horses. Bales were kind of a nice invention that allowed farmers to stack and store things and to move them around easier, and there are different sizes and styles of bales today to accomplish various purposes.
Now, one last thing I wanted to touch on is a lot of times we get questions about, hey, if you're taking that straw, that hay off the field, well, you're removing a lot of nutrients, right? Yes, you are. Now, we don't always know necessarily how many nutrients we're removing. You'd have to test that material to find out what you took off the field. But that's one of the reasons why, like on our farm, we leave the straw or stalks out there because I don't want to have to replace that fertilizer. Also, if I have more residue left out in the soil, it's better protecting my soil from erosion. So there are reasons sometimes I want to leave it out there, but I can certainly understand how a lot of people would like to bale their residue.
Well, as you can see, there are a lot of different types of bales, and believe it or not, our Weed of the Week used to get chopped and stored and used for a purpose. We'll talk about that when we unveil the identity of this week's Weed of the Week.